critical illness insurance. I think everybody ought to own it, especially if you're an agent. I mean, you're getting a commission on your own business, so you're paying pennies on the dollar for your first year premium. You ought to have it. The product, I'm getting excited about it because I'm committed to it, and I'm on a crusade to get it out to everybody, and no one's ever told me it's a bad idea. No one. You need to tell people it's important that they know that it wasn't created by the insurance industry, critical illness insurance. It was invented, it was formulated by a doctor, and not just any doctor. Is anybody that's my age or older familiar with Christian Barnard?
Yes.
Okay. Randy, what's he known for? Dr. Christian Barnard.
First heart transplant recipient that lived.
He wasn't a recipient. He was the doctor.
Well, I'm in the ballpark.
Yeah, he was in the room.
He had something to do with art.
The first successful human heart transplant. He was the surgeon, Dr. Christian Barnard. It wasn't him. Okay, but it was his brother, who was on the same team of cardiovascular surgeons, Dr. Marius Barnard. Okay, Dr. Marius Barnard, and by the way, the first successful human heart transplant was in December of 1967 in Johannesburg, South Africa. In 1983, Marius Barnard came up with the concept because he saw tremendous need in the marketplace, despite the fact that disability income insurance did exist. Still, he noticed that there were two things that his patients all had in common. Number one, the ones that lived would have been dead without the procedure. Number two, the survivors were dying financially. They were bankrupt. They were all broke. And the stress, financial stress, brought on by not being able to work, was causing a lot of these people to try to get back to work before they were physically and psychologically ready to work, and that was taking its toll. That was taking its toll on their health. He saw a need for the product. He came up with the first critical illness policy in 1983. It spread throughout South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Great Britain, Canada. As a matter of fact, every country it's penetrated, it's been a huge success. In most countries, it outsells mortgage life insurance. Remember those numbers? 48% of all mortgage foreclosures, 50% of personal bankruptcy, the result of a serious illness, 3% because of death. 3%. And we're selling mortgage life insurance. We need to be selling mortgage critical illness insurance. Marius Barnard, okay, male, female. Here are the numbers. Cancer, heart disease, stroke. 50% of all men in the United States will be diagnosed with cancer at some point in their life. 33% of all women. Heart disease, 33% of all men, 25% of all women. Stroke is even, 12%. 12%. Add it up. The big three, 95%, 70%. So if you're in front of a husband and wife, or you're doing this over the phone or via the internet, because more and more of our business is being transacted, you know that there's an 83% chance that this couple will benefit by having this policy in place. 83%. If you don't tell them about it, well, I feel so strongly about it, I had my attorney draft a letter, a waiver of liability letter. If you're interested, email me, call me, toll free, I'll get it out to you. You show it to them, you go through the benefits. If they decide to take a pass, they want to think about it, I encourage you to have them sign. So they don't come back, Rich, you later on, 5 years from now, after having a heart attack, saying, you never told me about it. This agent did not tell me there was any such product. He never told me it existed. Had I known that it did, I would have purchased it, a lot of it, a high face amount, and I wouldn't be in this dilemma. I found myself today. You don't want that to happen to you. You don't want to have to test your E&O insurance, so make sure that they sign the letter. That's how strongly I feel about it. Everybody should own it. All right, so there's a gentleman in Houston, Texas. His name is Dr. Stanislav Burzynski. It's spelled Burzynski. He's got a clinic in Houston, Texas. Burzynski.com, I think is his website. This man, there are many people out there who think he actually created a cure for cancer back in the late 1970s through a process called anti-neoplastic therapy. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but from what I've read, it seems to change the genetic structure of the cancerous cell and get it to stop multiplying. It stops multiplying, eventually dies, the tumor shrinks, ultimately disappears. His success rate is 96% versus orthodox methods of treating cancer, 64%, which is significant. In other words, 96% of his patients are still alive 5 years from treatment versus 64%. This is surgery, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, cut, burn, and poison, as I call it. I look at it this way. 100 people go to Brzezinski, and 100 people go in for chemo. And by the way, chemotherapy, radiation therapy attacks your immune system. It attacks every cell, not just your cancerous cells, the good cells too. It attacks your lymph nodes, your spleen, your liver, your immune system, the very things you need to be strong while you're battling cancer. Everything's under attack, everything's dying. 64%. 100 people go to Brzezinski, 4 are dead 5 years later. 100 people go in for chemo, radiation therapy, because your doctor is not going to recommend this. Your doctor is only going to recommend this, even though a lot of medical professionals are opting out of traditional treatment. But if they recommend you go here, something goes wrong, you're one of these casualties, this is considered experimental treatment. He hasn't gone through the FDA testing and approval process. Okay? They're subject to a medical malpractice lawsuit. 100 people go into the hospital, 36 are dead within 5 years after treatment. So it's 900% more. That's a 9 times greater death rate. So again, it's not an IQ test, but if it were you, Butch, you, a family member, somebody you care about, God forbid was diagnosed with cancer, and assuming this is true, what I'm saying is true, you checked it out, given the choice, where would you go?
96%.
You would, right? Okay, how about this though? If you go here, you can have the best plan out there. You can have our plan. Okay? With the critical illness rider, you wouldn't have anything out of pocket. You'd actually be ahead $1,500. Right? If you go here, we won't pay a dime for it. There's not a single policy. You can have the best group plan in the country. We won't pay a dime for this experimental treatment. You've got about $50,000 on average out of pocket. How are you going to come up with that? You know that over half the households in America have less than $10,000 saved for retirement? That's true, less than $10,000. And if you don't have $10,000 for retirement, you know they don't have, I call it an ET fund, an experimental treatment fund for something like this. They don't have that. There's no money set aside for experimental treatment. They got nothing. How are you going to come up with $50,000? Remember, back up, $50 a month. We added $50 a month additional critical illness insurance on a 35-year-old, which pays what? $80,000? $80,000. Not a lot of money, but it wipes this out. And he's still got $30,000 left over after treatment to make up for loss of income while you're recovering. I'd rather be $30,000 ahead than $50,000 in the hole. And if that's not enough, get another $100,000. Get another $200,000. I don't care. It's up to you. It's how much do you want? What can you afford? It's not based on income.